Hello, and welcome to my video presentation on 30 Days of Night, written by Steve Niles. To introduce the creative team, I'm going to start with the illustrator, or the artist, is Pyotr Kolosky. The colorist is Brad Simmons. The letterer is Tom Long. Assistant editor is Chase Morotes, while the editors are Chris Ryle and Tom Waltz. And the publisher is Greg Goldstein of IDW Publishing. And this came out in 2002 and was followed by a graphic novel three-part series 2 years later in 2004. It's actually quite hard to get your hands on a hard copy of the graphic novel. I went to 3 or 4 actual comic book stores, didn't carry any, same with 2 Barnes & Nobles and a Walmart. So it's actually pretty hard to get your hands unless you order online, which I just didn't have the time to do to wait for the shipping to complete this assignment with everything going on. But yeah, let's continue with the prompt. So what I have my hands on is the compilation series, mini-series, even though they do have a very genuine graphic novel style. As far as the end of Act 1, it ends on the bottom of page 5, just like our format. And here we see kind of dull coloring, and then at the very bottom we see a vibrant red, and it kind of pops out. That is the transition of Act 1 into Act 2. That is where the attack commences on the people of the town of Barrow, Alaska. And that's the first encounter of the vampires with the humans, as far as the humans seeing the vampires attack other humans instead of just speculation of either murder or whatever have you throughout the story. So I've kind of been torn on the part of whose story this is. I feel like it's more of the vampire story than the people's. They have a more clear-cut goal, while the people's goal is strong and clear to survive. That's very apparent. But the vampires have a much more calculated goal. They have there's more of a meticulous thought process, I guess, in their journey, in their story. They choose this town, Alaska, because there's 30 days of night. They don't have to worry about the sun killing them. They have more or less infinite supply line, or at least for the time being, of just humans to feed on without any interruption for 30 solid days. And we see this at the end of Act 1 in this issue, where it transitions into just all-out carnage. And so Act 2 totally supports the goal of the first act, which is the rendezvous of the vampires on the outskirts, and then Act 2 immediately shows the attack commencing on the town. So it goes right into it. The dialogue of the comic is geared more towards the vampires' goals. We see even what the humans do and talk about still has everything to do with what the vampires are doing. They don't really get a step ahead. They're always responding to what the vampires are doing. And we don't really see the humans take control of the situation until Eben, who is played by Josh Hartnett, if you've seen the movie, and spoiler alert, he injects himself with vampire's blood, becomes one of them, and is able to defeat the head vampire, Marlowe. In the comics, it's Vicente. So there's a little different. Even though Marlowe does exist, he's the one that organizes the attack on the town, but Vicente is an elder and does not approve of his decision and ends up killing him, actually, in this issue. So it's a really good read. It's very accurate. The transition from the comic to the movie is very similar, but I have to say that I do like the comics a little bit more than the movie, just because they're so unique. A lot of horror movies kind of dilute the pool, and there's not too many horror comics of this nature. Like, this is an authentic horror comic. Like, it's very violent and graphic in every sense of the word. The story arc has a very clear beginning, middle, and end. At the beginning, the vampires are there in the middle of a rendezvous, planning their attack. In the middle, they attack. They gain control of the town. The people fight back or try to survive. I wouldn't say they fight back, actually, because they don't do much of that. They attempt, but they're just futile. The end, like I said, Evan injects himself with a vampire blood and fights Marlowe. in the movie and fights Vicente in the comics. Saves the day, but he ends up ultimately dying a vampire's death and chooses to die by sun. There's not much of a story arc in this particular issue just because it's wrapping up the story and it's kind of a transitional issue. The vampires take over the town, Marlowe's killed, and that's pretty much that. But it's very informational, it's very straightforward, and a lot of imagery. There's actually not a whole lot of text. The end is where Eben fights the vampire, kills him, but it's a very satisfying resolution because Eben himself dies. Sorry if you don't know that. But the story's too dark for a happy ending, so I was very satisfied with the resolution because that's the way it should have ended, and I totally agreed with the ending of it. The most solid character arc would have to be Eben, being the protagonist, being the hero, but he actually does go through the biggest change in the story, physically and metaphorically, because he kind of learns sacrifice throughout and there's character growth, but he actually changes into a vampire. So that's the most clear-cut character change in my opinion. The transitions of the story are established and extremely effective. They move along so fast. I read a lot online that some people were kind of upset with how fast the stories moved along, and I could see why some people would have that opinion. The transitions were very fast, but you didn't miss any information. It was right in front of you, A, B, C, D, laid out linear and very comprehensive. So using the transitional ideas related to this chosen work, there's nothing left unknown. All of the transitions are fulfilled with imagery or text, and they provide all the information that we need. Every page uses the mini comic idea where it stands alone and could be, either a cover or its own story. And prime example is this very first page where this is Marlowe smoking, waiting for vampires to come out of the woods and meet him. But if you notice, if you look closely, sorry, it's kind of hard to see with the glare, they're in jeans and a t-shirt because they're clearly not normal humans. And so that page alone, just showing the imagery, shows that it's its own story in itself. So it's not just, well, what are these people doing? It's, oh, well, these might not even be people. So what are these possibly not people doing? So every page is a great mini comic, and it works very effectively. Moving on to the directional flow. Like I said, it moves very fast, but it's very linear. That's the kind. It just goes, and it's very easy to keep up. It's very easy to understand. But every time you saw a certain image and you had to turn the page in your head, you're like, "Oh, that person's dead." It's just one of those things where it just moves and moves, and you just keep up with it. So I totally recommend this to anyone in my class if you're into the horror, gory, violent side of comics. This will definitely fulfill your needs. Disclosure, it does show, while it is drawings and sketches, it does show women and children getting ripped apart. Not so much children, but it implies there's a few in the grasp of the vampires. You kind of just know what happens. So there is that disclosure that I do have to say, just as forewarning. Since I already told you the whole premise, I figured I might as well let you know that. But I would recommend it. And the main observations that I have of this would be just how structured it was. While comics allow you to kind of break barriers and tell a story in a completely different medium, this was very structured. This was very organized and very efficient as far as a read. And it really put into perspective of how informative a story can be. This was just pure, here's what's happening, here's what these people are doing, and here's what's about to happen. And then it happens, and it's as simple as that. So I recommend this to any classmates. It's a really good read. The comics themselves are only $6 a pop right now. I think the actual graphic novel is $25, which isn't that much. I wish I could have ordered it in time to get this, which I still might, just to put on my bookshelf. So we'll see if I get my hands on that. But I hope you enjoyed this video presentation, and thank you for your time.